Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zack Maxwell, publisher of the Arlington Voice and host of the Arlington Voice broadcast. I'm happy that you're here today. We are in our second episode. For those of you who had an opportunity to tune in last time, we basically laid out the foundation of this show, which is we're going to take about 15 to 20 minutes each week to really look at issues in Arlington that are of importance to you, to me, your neighbors, and just the overall future and viability of Arlington. And so today we have a great topic to discuss, one that I think is very controversial, and I'm excited to talk about. But let me give you a warning right now that if you don't like hearing opinion and you don't like hearing something that you might not agree with, then you may need to turn off this show and go listen to something else. So with that said, it's important to point out that the ability to do things like the Arlington Voice would not be possible had it not been for some of our great sponsors over at The Voice. And one of those is a guy who has literally been with us for more than 2 years, a man named Don Harris. He runs a auto body shop over in kind of central Arlington off of Cooper called G&M Collision Repair. And if you are ever in any kind of need for auto body or collision repair of any kind, even if it's just a small nick in the side of your car, give Don a call. He's a great guy. I love working with him. Very veteran-friendly, nice conservative guy too. All around, just cool guy to be around. Really loves his city and likes to make sure everything's moving in the right direction. So we certainly appreciate Don's support and the support of his workers over there at G&M Collision. You can visit him at 2530 South Cooper Street, and his phone number is 817-274-8821. Again, that's 817-274-8821. Give him a call. Tell him Zack Maxwell sent you. He'll know who you're talking about. But I want to get right into today's topic of discussion because it's something that's been taking place this last week, and I think it deserves a little bit more attention than it has received so far. But before we talk about that, I want to give a nod over to something that's taken place in Irving, especially this last week, but more particularly over the last couple of months, because I believe it plays into our topic of discussion today. For those of you who don't know, the Irving City Council, along with Mayor Beth Van Dyne, I believe I'm saying that right, passed a resolution last week basically saying that they would like the state to pass some kind of law that prohibits judges from using foreign law in their rulings. Now, there are some people that look at this and they say, well, she's only doing it because there's concerns about Islamic tribunals and she's just an Islamophobe and a racist and whatnot. And there's some people that look at this and go, huzzah, we're getting something done. Regardless of where you stand on this issue, it's important. And the reason why it's receiving so much attention in the media right now is because it's something that we don't see very often, which is a local representative taking a hardline stance on an issue that is otherwise deemed to be off topics strictly out of the sole fear of offending someone. And by God, Mayor Beth Van Dyne has taken a stance on an issue which, and she's being characterized like this as a racist white supremacist. But for once, we're actually seeing an elected official really take a hardline stance on an issue, and because it's not a popular issue and it's something that we believe we shouldn't be allowed to talk about, it's receiving a lot of attention. And again, it's not whether you agree or disagree with her. The fact is that she is pushing forward a discussion that is otherwise viewed as off limits. And that kind of leads us into our topic today. You may or may not have heard about this incident that occurred over at UTA this last week and is actually still ongoing. Up at UTA, they have a pro-life organization called Pro-Life Mavericks. And these guys last week, for their second time doing this, have taken 2,900 crosses, little white crosses, and they have put them in front of the UTA library. And the sole reason of doing this is so that they can provide a visual picture of roughly how many Americans are aborted every day in this country. And it has gained a lot of attention from the students, not that much attention from the media. In fact, the only place that I've seen it reported so far has been in the Shorthorn, which is UTA's college publication. I was working on an article myself. However, when I finished the last interview Friday evening, I learned that the display had already been taken down and that it was already over. But this is important not because of where you stand as a pro-life or pro-choice, but because there were people who didn't agree with that particular display, and they were doing everything in their power to try and get it removed. And so what I want to look at today is I want to look at some of those actions that occurred this last weekend and what people were saying, because I had an opportunity to go out there and see the display myself, and I actually talked with several students for the sole purpose of being able to get their side on the issue. And I have to say, it was a great reminder as to why I am not in college, because clearly I am not smart enough. And so I want to cut to the first audio piece that we have here, which is me talking to a student who happened to walk by this particular display, and she was not too thrilled about it. And here's what she had.
Okay, personally, it is offensive.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of imposing because, I understand everyone should have a stance and everything like that, but I just feel like you don't really know the personal lives of students. This could be a trigger for someone that's, walking
Right.
past the... I know they're trying to be positive, but I feel like this is just way too much. I'm a psychology student,
Right.
so we learn all about cues and triggers, and I feel like somebody that has had a traumatic, experience with something like this, that's had to have an abortion or, is close to someone, it could be a really negative trigger. So I feel like this is really
Thank God for those psychology students. I tell you what, where would we be? Where would we be without them? And again, it's just a reminder of why I am not smart enough to be in college, because she said what is really at the root of this problem, which is because somebody's opinion about a controversial issue might trigger somebody else, they shouldn't be allowed to have that opinion. Now, let's be real with each other. Triggering people is the only reason why we're able to exchange meaningful dialogue in this country. Under this girl's precedent, nobody would be allowed to voice an opinion on anything because someone somewhere along the line is going to be triggered into disagreeing. I could come to you and I could say, Mr. Producer, it is just absolutely beautiful outside. And you could come back to me and say, no, it isn't. I think it's a shit of a day. And because of that, you have been triggered. And so she really cuts right to the root of the problem, which is if you have an opinion, you need to keep it to yourself, especially if it's something that we feel like might trigger somebody's emotions. Now, we hear this a lot from the left. And I try not to make this show a left-right issue, but in this particular case, it is, because you have those on the left who don't agree with the display of the pro-life group, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to get it shut down. And so last week, they actually assembled several people to go stand outside of this particular venue and shout and hold signs and yell at people to come over and sign their petition so that they could get the pro-life group to take down that particular display because it offended a few people. And, this next quote comes from a report that was put out in the Shorthorn about somebody who was talking about this particular display. And this comes from English junior Cody Needham, who says, "It's not that we're against people saying what's on their mind. It's just we think there's a better way for them to do so." Well, there you go. What would Cody suggest be a better way to do it? Would she suggest that there be no display at all and that the pro-life movement simply take their opinion out of sight and out of mind? Because that's what it seems like they're trying to do. But, I always love how the left believes that they have better ways for the opposition to do things. Now, the next clip that I want us to cut into is taken from the Shorthorn's newspaper, where they actually went out with a video camera and interviewed some of these protesters who were out there last week complaining about this particular display. And I'd like us to just take a look at this first cut. Go cut one from that audio.
We're trying to get the display behind us taken down or altered. Please come hear us out.
It's shaming and disrespectful towards women. Please come hear why.
Yeah, we're just here.
There you go. They just told you. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They want the display taken down. They want it altered because they don't agree with it. But it gets even better because the next guy that I'd like us to cut to at cut 28. This is
Yeah, I mean, we just want to have a discussion. I mean, if you're gonna hate, at least tell us why you hate. That way we can at least have this general forum without just yelling at each other. That's what starts wars. That's what starts fights. This is not how we need to be discussing things at a center of education.
fantastic. We don't want to start wars and we don't want to start fights and we shouldn't be yelling, but we're out there yelling. And that's what we're doing. We're essentially doing the same things that we say that you shouldn't be doing. And again, it's all about kind of how they frame their argument, which in this case, this guy frames it as hate. If you have an opinion that's different from mine, then it must just be because you hate people. And in this case, it's women. They believe that the pro-life display is bashing women and it's bashing equal rights. Or like cut 3, go ahead.
We are the 5th most diverse campus in America. They need to be more culturally sensitive to different religions and cultures on campus. I mean,
Boom, there you have it. Cultural insensitivity. So you either hate or you're being culturally insensitive. And so in this case, they believe, and this is just from me talking with people out there, that the crosses represent religion, and it's culturally insensitive to use the crosses to represent the lives of the unborn who might be aborted. Now, this girl who we just played actually continues a little bit further. Go ahead and play that cut.
by all means, they should represent their views, freedom of speech. I mean, we're pro-choice, we're not pro-abortion, they're pro-life. I mean, we should be allies, if anything, kind of. But they also need to be more aware of what they're putting out toward the public. It shouldn't be emotional manipulation, it should be education.
There you go. It shouldn't be emotional manipulation. It should be education. Well, I got something to tell you. I don't understand how this couldn't be any more educational with what they're doing. They're putting what they believe to be a legitimate fact into a visual representation, which is 2,900 small white crosses represent the number of unborn who are aborted every day in America. I don't see a whole lot of emotion there as much as I see the fact of things. But again, because it's not culturally sensitive and it's something that they believe starts hate, then we don't want to see it. Now, of course, this same group has gone through to peddle a petition, and they're trying to get people to sign the petition so they can convince the pro-life group to cease what they're doing and not do this display anymore. Because I don't know if I said this, but this is actually the second time they've done this display. They also did it last year, too. But, you know, I talked with Jenny Wynn, for example. She was one of the organizers of a protest against this particular display. And, you know, she says it pretty straightforward. She sees it as offensive. She thinks it's offensive to Christians. Ironically, she's the president of the Students for a Democratic Society. There's so much irony there that, you know, we could go on about that. But, I mean, seriously, quote unquote, right here, she says, "We don't believe hate speech should be protected by the law." So again, something that might be of a different opinion than theirs, they simply label as hate speech. And what they try to do is they try to quash it. Or better yet, if they can't get their petition through, they just go straight to vandalizing, which is what happened last week whenever the several signs that were stationed around the display to explain what it was about were taken out and spread around campus or just, you know, overall vandalized. And I asked Jenny on the phone about this. I said, do you know anything about this? And of course, her response to me was, "No, I have no, I had no idea that this was happening." But she said in the same breath that I don't have any problem with the signs being removed. That basically, there's people out there that are severely affected by abortion, and so they better be ready to deal with those people who are taking an emotional response. So here's the way I look at it. People need to stop being little bitches about this kind of stuff. Stop getting all butthurt and getting your feelings all in a knot just because somebody has a different opinion than you. The reality is that this country is fueled by great conversations meaningful dialogue exchanged between people who have different opinions. And like the psychology major who says that, oh, well, I'm a psychology major and I've learned about triggers, and if you put something out there, you might be triggered. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. If you can't deal with a pro-life display, how the hell are you going to deal with some of the other curveballs life is going to throw at you whenever you get out of college? Because I got to tell you, there are days that I wake up, and sometimes I just don't want to be offended either, but I have to take it at face value, and I have to take it with a smile on my face. But we are teaching kids, and especially college students, and it's actually something that I didn't even catch on recording with that psychology major, but in our interview, she told me, well, UTA is a more liberal college, and because of that, it should be more accepting to liberal ideas. Well, there you have it, right there. The college students, people like this psychology major, and people like Jenny, and people like those in that video that we played just a while ago, they feel like their opinion is the right opinion, and if you don't agree with it, then it doesn't belong on campus. And again, it's why I said I'm simply not smart enough for college. You know, those people, thank God for those psychology majors, because where would we be without them? So again, at the end of the day, we need to stop walking around on eggshells in a half-assed, one-sided attempt to avoid triggering people's emotions. Using that argument that someone shouldn't have opinion because it might trigger someone else's emotions is bullshit. There are going to be so many things that you face as you exit college and try to make something of yourself. They're going to be more in your face and triggering of emotions than a pro-life display that is quietly using crosses to get its point across. Now, and here's the thing too. These same people that were bitching and complaining about this display have already worked to organize their own display this week. They have decided, well, we're going to come back with our own display. So, obviously you feel like people should have to be forced to whatever you want. And here's the thing, I think that's great. I think that the ability to exchange your ideas and have your ideas out there is what makes this country as successful as it is. And it's a big difference, in my opinion, between the right and the left, which is the right is often a lot more accepting of hearing the other side's case than the left is of hearing the right. I don't care if you want to have your display out there. Have it out there all day. Have it out there for a week. Have it out there for 2 weeks. It can be coat hangers for all I care. That's the kind of meaningful dialogue that moves our country and our city forward. So I think that this is, again, just a very interesting issue. It didn't receive any coverage in any of the other news publications. And like I said, I had planned to write a report about it, but by the time I had my stuff done, the display had already been taken down, and I felt like it would have been a little untimely, so I decided to save it for today. But, I'd be interested in hearing what you think about this. Do you agree? Do you think that we are churning kids out of the college system who simply are being bred with this mentality that they have a right to not be offended? Because let me tell you something. Your right to not be offended doesn't trump my First Amendment right. I don't see anywhere in the Constitution where it says, well, you don't have a right to be offended. Point that out to me, please. I don't see even hate speech in the Constitution, because whether you agree with it or not, hate speech is speech. It's free speech. And yes, hate speech is going to trigger emotions the same exact way that Mayor Beth Van Dyne up in Irving has triggered emotions with the whole adoption against Islamic Tribunal. They have labeled her as a hate, fear-mongering Islamophobe, and by God, because she has an opinion on something that we just traditionally do not discuss, the only option is for us to try and silence her and keep her from having an opinion. So that basically wraps up this week's episode. Again, I'd love to hear what you have in the comments section. Please provide it below. And again, we wouldn't be able to do some of the great things we do at the Arlington Voice had it not been for good sponsors like Don Harris over at G&M Collision. If you have some auto repair work that you need done, give them a call, 817-274-8821. Again, my name's Zack Maxwell, publisher of the Arlington Voice, and I will catch you guys next week.